In this tip, I'm going to show you how to paint a close-up of a silver birch tree. Let's get stuck in. All we're going to do is start off with the size 6 brush, or the worker, and I'm going to mix up some natural grey, just with the water. This will put the shadow, give you the roundness, the 3D effect to it. So I'm going to paint up one side, and I'm just going to go up, and I'm just going to have a bit of a branch going off to one side. Leave a gap, and do a little bit more. So imagine that's the branch sticking off to one side. Clean your brush very quickly. Just dab it on a bit of tissue so it's not soaking. And then what we'll do is just use the water what's on that brush and just working in the same direction. I want you to move it over horizontally, and it will start to soften away and almost give us a ghost image of the tree. Clean the brush again if you need to. And you can see how, in fact, if you dry the brush through your fingers, it's even better just to help that blend. It just makes the paint disappear a little bit at the ends there. And you can see that branch kind of sticking off to one side. So a silver birch tree is like a whitey colour with all cracks and things on it. What I'll do next is come to the opposite side of the tree and just paint a line all the way up the opposite side. And I bet you get the idea to this now. Clean your brush, wipe it on tissue, and then just lightly water it off into the centre of the tree. So in this case, off to the left-hand side there. So that's the basic bark, okay? And then what we'll do is we'll put all the texture and all the dry brush marks on there. So squeeze your brush through your fingers. Just lightly mop up the excess. Make sure there's no big blobs of water or anything out there. It's also nice to give a bit of dry brush as well as you do this. It just creates the texture. Then we'll put some burnt sienna into the grey, making more of a rusty colour, and then drop some more grey in with it as well. So we're getting a browny, rusty tinge. Wipe it over some tissue or your neighbour's trousers, so it's just got a little bit of paint on there, okay? And what we're looking at is this side of the brush action. So it's using the divots in the paper for this one. So just very, very lightly, just lightly skim, following the direction of the actual bark. And you can see I'm putting the littlest pressure. Use that finger to, sort of little finger to kind of rest and just to reduce the pressure that you put on the actual paper there. And it really is. It's just giving that little bit of texture and a bit of dirt on it. Bit more grey into the burnt sienna. Make it darker. Same thing, dry brush. Take it off, and then just very lightly, just going to go every so often, putting that little bit of dark in there. And even do more of a concentration in one or two areas. So you can almost sort of wiggle across from one side to the other, almost creating the cracks. And you can see there how it's starting to come together quite nice. And the final step is to use the medium tree and texture brush, nice and clean. Wipe it almost dry. Use the same colour. You could maybe darken it with a bit more grey if you wanted to. Really work it in. Get that brush spiky all the way so it goes all fluffy. Take the excess off and just very lightly almost bend the brush away from you so it's the tall hairs are kind of going off in the same angle as I'm doing. It helps if you lean with the brush and just very lightly just add in a couple of really gentle rings. And you can see it's something to practice first. You can see that there, how it's making them little very fine dry brush rings and cracks in the actual bark, but really something that you can really make a nice focal feature in the foreground of your watercolour landscapes there. And I think we can stop at that, folks. So there you go, a very, very effective 5-minute close-up detail of a silver birch tree bark. In this tip, I'm going to show you how to create sparkle and add a bit of life to your water. What we're going to do, first of all, is use some sandpaper. This is a sandpaper block, but really just a fine-grained sandpaper. Rip it off and just use half of it. And if you just kind of bend it over your finger like this, and that's all you need to do, just give it a good rub. Make it very slim where the sun is. You can see already it's taking the colour off. Make it wider, and again you can see it's the idea of the sun catching. Keep brushing it away every so often, you'll see what's happening. And just make it really wide. Keep brushing it off, you can see that light coming through. It's just taking the surface off, but just on the higher points of the paper. Once you've had a bit of a rub, what you can do is use the same piece of sandpaper, fold it in half twice, so you're getting a bit of a beveled edge. And we can use this and do some more horizontals, more refined edges, but you've got to keep those lines straight for this. So we can see how it's coming forward. It's also very good if we make a smaller piece, fold it in half again. On the cliffs maybe, could just do little bits on the edges. So where the sun's catching them. Even on that little Cornish tin mine. And you can see just how simple it is to create quick and simple texture using a piece of sandpaper. We can also use a craft knife as well. Of course, this is very sharp, so be a bit cautious. Make sure you've got your parents' permission for this one. And what we'll do is we'll just put some sparkle to the water. Where the cliffs or the rocks sit, where the water crashes up against, literally just get in there. Makes a cracking sound, this. You can't beat a good scratch, really, but it just goes in and it really gets that sparkle to the water. Pretty much all the way across broken line, right across where the sun is. And then every so often, on the water reflection, it also works very well for scratching off the light coming down, right down towards the foreground. Maybe even a couple of seagulls in your sky. So you can literally just scratch those off. And just one or two little splashes, so really dig deep, but don't be afraid to dig, use the point of it. It won't go through to the other side. I've been scratching for many years and I've never gone through to the other side yet. So just keep going. And there you go, folks. A very quickie and simple way of creating sparkle and life to your water. In this tip, folks, I want to share with you my technique for painting waterfalls. I've prepared this sky, trees and landscape, and we're going to get stuck into this using the medium tree and texture brush, nice and clean, and I'm just going to mix up some pale natural blue. And this is going to be perfect for getting the gushing water, get the movement in your water. Another chap who wrote the book on that, IP freely. Give it a good stipple, lightly dab it on tissue. Practice first. Again, if you've got a neighbour there, practice on theirs. But the technique is to use the tall hairs of your brush. It's good to try it at the side. And just very lightly, you can see, literally, almost angling the brush forward of the metal piece. Little finger seems to shoot out there as a way of controlling the pressure. And just basically, lightly stroke down from the top. Get a bit of movement into that water. And of course, if you keep building this up, it is nice to let it disappear towards the bottom, but as it comes to the top, just sort of start over the edge and then bring it over. That works a lot better. And it's getting that direction there to it. And you can see there just how it's starting to give movement. Your finger's always quite good to bed it in. Let's go a bit lighter. Add a bit more water to the colour. Stipple it again. Dab the excess off on some scrap or some tissue. Just continue to add ripples, movement, flow. And towards the bottom, you can always come down to the straight. But again, just try and use those tall hairs on the brush. That's the secret to this, really. That's what it's really about. And then make it go over the top. Clean your brush, change your colour, go for some grey, go for some natural grey. Again, not too strong with the colour, give it a good stipple. And then just take the excess off on the tissue again. And again, we can just put this flow to it again. and just get it coming through, and it's just going over the same area again. Concentrations in the top half of the water, and the more strokes you do, the more random strokes you do, the more effective the water will be when it comes gushing over the top. Your finger's always there to bed them in a little bit. That's a watercolour blending tool, that. Just give it a bit of a smudge if you need to do that. But that's looking fine, that's got the motion to it. I tend to go for just the size 6 brush or the worker brush and use the grey at this point as well. And just bring 1 or 2 coming down from the water. So follow the angle of the water, bring them over the top. This makes more chunks and it kind of groups them together a little bit. And then just dampen your brush, wipe it on tissue, and then just make those lines almost become part of the actual waterfall. And then just scattered around the top, put a few pale grey, horizontal ripples. Again, adding more movement to your water. Just get it coming through there. At the bottom, you can imagine how that's going to be all flowy and washy and everything like this, so you can really go for it down there. You can really splash it around a bit. Get a bit of motion. And the quicker you do this, the more motion you're going to get with it. And then the small tree brush with the blue stipple, not too wet, just putting little bits of froth. Maybe just going to go a bit darker with the blue there. Take the excess off. Just put the bubbles in the froth. Just get the bubbles tapping away. And just get them all bubbling up. And then we'll work those in a second or two. So clean your brush again, wipe it on tissue, and do the same tapping technique just to bed them down so that brush is almost dry, just to bed them in. So just kind of dance across with your brush, not yourself, and just get them working in. And you can continue to add as many of these as you feel works on your picture. And clean your brush again, fade them away. Use the size 6 brush, use the pale blue, and just turn those blobs from spots into flowy water. And again, the more you do this, the more motion, the more movement you'll get. Get it all flowing, get it all moving around. And then literally the final thing to do is use the craft knife. Of course, it's very sharp, so be cautious. And just to give that extra little bit of flow, especially in the water, just put a few, dig deep again. Don't be afraid to dig deep. The paper can take it. And even just a couple coming over the top. And it really does make a quick and simple and very effective waterfall technique. So we're trying to get that motion to the top. There you go, folks. A very simple and effective way of doing waterfalls in watercolour. So that brings us to the end of this programme, folks, and the series. I hope you've enjoyed watching, and I'll see you next time round.
Now available to buy. Try these techniques at home whenever you wish. The extended DVD of today's workshop is now available from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.